precinct-based rainwater harvesting systems for climate resilience, a Perth case study. And I would welcome Mitch to come forward and share that story.
Thanks very much, Deepa. Hi everyone, my name is Mitch Hedges. I'm a water and health scientist at Syrinx Environmental. So Syrinx is an environmental consulting company. We're a multidisciplinary team and we've got a really strong focus on green infrastructure. And today I'm just going to talk to you about one of our really exciting projects. It's a precinct-based large-scale rainwater harvesting system and how that can tie into climate resilience, and which is based in Perth in WA. So without further ado, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the site. So it's called the Australian Fine China Development, or AFC. It's in Subiaco, which is near to the city. It's an old industrial site which produced fine china products, and it's about 4.5 hectares in area. The client is the Metropolitan Redevelopment Authority, and they provide ongoing environmentally sustainable development, management and planning approvals until all of the 7 lots are built out. We were really lucky on this project to have such a great client and a large former industrial site on a large scale, and a client that was happy to have a precinct-wide initiative or approach to environmentally sustainable development. So we got really lucky with the developer. So what were the environmentally sustainable drivers of this project? Well, we kind of have to go back to 2006. The project is still going, but back when this project started, there was a review of national benchmark sustainability projects at the time, and it was found there wasn't really very many projects of this type that had been undertaken on this scale. So we wanted to demonstrate the total water cycle in action and provide an integrated approach to development, and provide that national benchmark using this project. So see what we could get our teeth into. As I mentioned before, we had great client backup, particularly in the contracts of sale and the sustainable guidelines which were issued to developers to tell them to mandate that they had to meet sustainable targets, because if you don't have that written into the contracts, the developer's just going to try and get out of it and save money. So it was really important that our client was on board from the very start. And this was driven by principles of resilience, self-sufficiency and integration with your landscape and built form and the natural water cycles. So there was a long timeline for this project, and we're now in operation. And this is kind of a bit about the philosophy of ESD. So philosophy 101 for ESD. You've got water, energy, waste, social sustainability and built form ESD all coming together to form a sustainable approach to development and climate resilience. And the client embodied these principles all the way through and distilled them in the contract. So when it came to build, things didn't drop off and the developers understood their responsibilities. And we help developers understand the total water cycle by using diagrammatic images to kind of communicate to them the importance of these systems and what they were doing, so they didn't just read the developer guidelines and didn't understand what we were trying to do, so bring them on board. And we wanted to use this project as a template for what we hope would one day be a commonplace kind of design approach. So specifically talking about my involvement or knowledge of the project, we wanted to use a sustainable, centralised rainwater storage system for offsetting hot water demand in the development. And there's also some other initiatives which I won't go into here, which you can see on screen. So what value did we put on water at the AFC? What are we talking about with the value of water? Well, for us, because we wanted to reduce demand on the potable supply, we were talking less about the kilolitre, $1 per kilolitre price than we are about the best use of the water environmentally. So for example, let's use the rainwater, which is almost near to drinking standard. Let's use that for showering and drinking, and let's not waste money trying to clean grey water beyond an intended reuse, such as gardening or toilet flushing. So our emphasis was on a fit for purpose use and not cost or regulatory ease, which is kind of a bit counter to traditional kind of thinking. And our response was to use the a harvested rainwater system for hot water usage, potentially some other uses, but we really wanted to reuse the water for hot water. And essentially it came down to valuing water, trying to use it for more than one use and avoiding ocean discharge, which we'll just ignore the previous presentation. And we need to be smart about those kind of approaches if we're going to build climate resilience, like using water for more than one use, cycling it through multiple uses. So what does our system do in that regard? So the design was to collect rainwater from roofs of the 7 development lots, and a minimum of 75% of the roof area was secured and locked away for rainwater harvesting, which obviously balancing that with the solar applications and other things. And we built an underground storage tank. So this guy in here, that's a 2 metre tall tank, about 40 metres long, and 7 of these things, all in a huge underground storage system. It's a subterranean lot, so we weren't impacting on saleable real estate, trying to keep the infrastructure in the public realm for many reasons. And basically, I'll go into the details of the system, but the rainwater will be harvested and stored in this tank and then sent back to the lots for hot water. And we're talking about 1.1 megalitres of storage, meeting up to almost half of the domestic hot water demand when the developments are complete, because more developments, more roofs, more harvesting, but also more draw, and approximately 10 to 15% of total scheme water demand reduction. So just quickly on the timelines of this project, it's been going a long time, but the key points on this slide, which I keep coming back to, is in 2008, the client locked in the sustainable targets in the contracts to make sure that all of the rest of these efforts going through the DOH, going through design, detailed design and management plans, that everything was locked in with the developers, so nothing changed, there was no surprises, and that a strong suite of contractual control documents meant that developers knew what they were getting into. And we also worked really hard with key regulators such as Department of Health to get approvals. And just briefly on the management plan involved for this scale, because if you're delivering water to the general public at this scale, the Department of Health, WA Department of Health is interested, and they will want to know how you're managing risks and that you're not going to affect public health. So they need you to create a management plan and ensure system compliance. So we did that, and we created our domestic hot water quality management plan. And basically it was a risk assessment and a management measures to ensure the public health is protected. It involved a quantitative microbial risk assessment and proactive and continuous engagement with the DOH. And as a result of that, we've got a really good relationship with the Department of Health, and they're completely on board with this system. They behind closed doors consider it low risk, but as this is kind of a precedent project, they wanted to make sure that we were quite rigorous in our management plan, which was great. So here's just a schematic of the system. So you can see the rainfall will fall on the roofs and passes through, there's a first flush diversion to get rid of that contaminant load at the start of rainfall. Rainfall moves into a collection pit. There's a sediment trap as well to get rid of most particulates. Heads into that 1.1 megalitre storage tank there, and passes then through into the treatment system. So our treatment system has a filtration system with a 10, 5 and 1 micron to get rid of suspended solids, metals and large pathogens. We've then got a UV unit which completes disinfection for remaining bacteria that aren't filtered. And then the treated water will be supplied to lots for hot water purposes. You can see a few tie-in points with the scheme water here. So we preferentially deliver our water to the lots, but there is scheme water backup. The important thing to note is it's really important to allocate roles and responsibilities to these assets, so divvying that up between the service provider, strata, governance bodies and developers. Basically, you want to make sure this infrastructure is fit for purpose at all times, otherwise you're going to have an incident on your hands and Department of Health knocking on your door. And the management plan binds all of this together with the governance structure and basically instructions on what to do in certain events. So let's have a look at the plant room inside. So this is the filtration housings and units. There's the 1 micron filter here. There's the control cabinet, and this is all under the road, and the uninterrupted power supply and the source of the UV here. The main point of this slide is just to show that these are very, very high quality pieces of infrastructure, but they're not expensive. They are commercially available, and this type of rainwater system, it can be done with material available like right now, and there's nothing stopping anyone from doing this. Some of the more Internet of Things elements of this system, which I really love, we've got remote access via telemetry, so anywhere if you've got access to the internet, you can dial in, you can see this. You can see this system here, check the differential pressures, what's my UV dosage at, what's my turbidity, do I have alarms? We did, the little vent fan turns on and off, it's very annoying. But what's your flows and what's my system doing? We also have an email alert system, so if something goes wrong, I'm alerted, but we have system interlocks. If your turbidity is too high, UV is too low, risk to the consumer, system automatically goes off. All of this helps to ensure compliance with our management plan and the Australian Drinking Water Guidelines as well. So that's the physical side of the system, but what bugs, what are we actually looking for in rainwater? So we sample for a very extensive suite of parameters, which I'm not going to bore you with on here. Mainly the microbes are the key potential risk to consumers. Also metalloids, organics and inorganics, we also test for them, but they're of lesser risk, and we've demonstrated that with our data. So bacteria are the key concern, so your fecal pathogens, basically from bird poo on the roof, because that's the only real source of fecal contamination in the system. So we test for E. coli, thermotolerant coliforms, and Campylobacter. Other things we test for less frequently are amoeba, Legionella, Pseudomonas, and viruses as well. So that's what we test for, but what do we actually get in our system? So basically, we don't have any pathogens in our treated rainwater, so we know that our treatment system is working. We'll just make one clarification. If you define E. coli as a pathogen, then that's wrong. So we will say there's no pathogens of human health concern in untreated rainwater. So the basic story is untreated rainwater in our system, given the size and scales, very high quality, and there's no pathogenic bacteria or microbes in treated rainwater, and nothing of human health concern with respect to any of the parameters in treated rainwater, be it metals, organics, and so on. So that's really good news. So our rainwater's looking good, and how do we communicate that to several of our stakeholders? Well, we use a traffic light report. The critical point of this report is it's formatted on a need-to-know basis, making it relevant to the user of the report. So red, pay attention; amber, something's up, you might need to take a look; and green, all good. We provide this report to non-technical people as well as technical people, so it's a one-stop shop to see how your microbial performance is tracking across each month, and this other maintenance issues, etc. It's manager friendly, you can instantly identify when things are going wrong. And we just wanted to make it easy for our client using graphics backed up with the science and more data if needed. And so that's microbial quality of the system. What about volume and usage? We provide our clients with this output. It can be a bit overwhelming, but it is really simple if you just step through from the left. So it's just showing the client, how much rain fell in that month, how much water did we harvest off the roof, what's the tank capacity, did I get any water top up from the scheme, and individual lots, how much did they draw off, because our client is really interested in per lot usage, because they need to apportion charges based on usage. So they're really interested in this, but we gave them some more summary statistics. How are you doing this month? How are you doing this month last year? And annual to date. And we also plot rainfall to give them a sense of how the rainfall is going with rainwater supply. There's no data here because we haven't delivered. I didn't put any dummy data in. And all the data is input each month to automatically generate this report. So it's a one entry system, and then this pre-populates automatically, and then you just export that as a PDF, send it to the client. It's pretty good. So in summary, the big picture lessons from this system was that the precinct scale allowed us greater delivery across the water cycle, and this was just one initiative of a few water initiatives in that development. And rainwater capture has double benefit, so contributing to supply reduction by reducing scheme use, and helps with stormwater management, managing the stormwater and storing it in a safe way for a reuse. And a couple of the things that I would take away from this is considering how your project can use the Internet of Things for remote sensing and reporting to reduce your operating costs. Instead of sending the guy down into the pit, you can just check the system, make sure it's all okay. And the importance of a quality system planning. When you're setting up your project, in all your design documentations and regulatory approvals, you need to just think a bit ahead of time and make sure you can achieve those approvals. And education's key. So this project was conceived as of a demonstration of what could be done, and I think we've demonstrated that almost. And in future, when we start supplying in the next few months, supplying to the lots, we'll be able to see the demand side profile of the water draw, and hopefully I'll come back in a year or two and give you some data on how that all went, and hopefully pick up some awards, but who knows. So now for questions, if you have any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mitch. Questions?
Sorry, with Vicky Murray, do you use data or data from literature?
So we had a specialist consultant do that, and they used data from the literature. So Campylobacter was found to be the pathogen of basically concern in meeting the WHO's daily one micro daily limit per year. So whilst they did it generally, they used that reference pathogen to then work out the treatment log reductions required in the plant room to ensure compliance with that. So that was actually quite a rigorous review. It wasn't just a standard thing. They actually went to the literature and looked at all the rainwater data in Australia in particular, and went and found the reference pathogen of concern, which was for us Campylobacter. Yeah.
Thanks. I was wondering if you considered using the recycled water for toilet flushing, for instance, instead of for creating hot water, which would require a lot less treatment. I'm just wondering on that side.
That's a very good statement and question. So yes, we have considered that, and actually in the management plan, we added extra clauses, and we've gotten it approved by the DOH for certain other uses, which do include toilet flushing as an option for developers. But the original vision was for hot water reuse at the highest standard, but it can be used for toilet flushing, and we actually have a lot being developed right now that is keen to use it for toilet flushing. The additional risk management measures required for that may not make financial sense for developers, because our management document requires them to have a high risk rated backflow prevention device within the lot and from each toilet device. So they're welcome to do that and apply under our framework, and it is possible to use that on a system. It's all approved, but whether or not they wanted to dish out for those high rated devices, which are legally required to be tested each 12 months, is up to them, but it is definitely an option. Yeah. And there's also a grey water system for toilet flushing as well. So the grey water system would also be used for toilet flushing as well in the first instance. Yeah.
Just a question about rainfall, and what is the average amount of rainfall that you would like to see to sustain such a system, and what happens on the dry times when it isn't happening? You've got a lot of monitoring going on. Do you shut that down and save a bit of dollar there?
I knew that question was coming. It's a really good question. So we'll just answer that back end of your question first. So if we didn't have rainwater in the tank and it was dry, we could not sample. So we would just note that in our reports, and yes, we would save money. But with those tie-ins with the water corp mains, our system delivers water preferentially using 440 kilopascals of pressure, and then the water corp's operating at 400. So we're always delivering first, and then at no time is the public short of water because the scheme will cut in. In terms of rainfall, the modelling's been done on more recent rainfall data, which is part of the drying cycle. And I guess what we're doing at the moment is profiling what's the minimum amount of rainfall which triggers charging of the tank, and then roughly, it won't be linear, but like the amount of rainfall, what does that mean for kilolitres in the tank? But the great thing about this system is the storage capacity. Even though you might have more frequent, less frequent, more intense events, it's able to capture and store that. And the more intense the event, the more storage you're getting. So if you have like low rainfall events more frequently, it's less effective than the higher events. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
No worries, thanks everyone.
Mitch. Thank you for that.